in teaching. I really have a tremendous amount of respect for Nkechi. I've never had I've always admired her, you know, and so I've been close, I've always stayed close to her work and what she has done in the city, you know, and I'm glad she has her own thing too. Very happy that she has her own thing, man. But I want to say this because, you know, we were a volunteer organization. We're talking about DC residents. We talking about neighbors. We talking about family members. We talking about sons, daughters, mothers, fathers, people that built the city. What is we talking about? We talking about people that gave their blood, sweat, and tears for this city. You understand? And then when they come back to our communities, we sitting up here acting like we need to rejudge them. You know, whether or not they should be here, whether or not they deserve this, that. What are we talking about? I mean, no, they do. They was here before you were here. You know what I mean? They are third and fourth generation Washingtonians. You know, but we sitting up still trying to play this game, this Russian roulette with people's lives based on this banner of public safety, which is fake anyway. You know what I mean? If you gave everybody, see, we all really need to get some truth serum, man. What happened to the truth serum? Because that's what we need. We need some truth serum because we really need to get down to, you know, Carlisle Holder. I really appreciate this brother, you know, and I'm endorse his book. We're going to buy 10 books. We're going to get the National Reentry Network for Returning Citizens are going to purchase 10 books because I believe every returning citizen should read this book. I've read it. It's dynamite. It's a dynamite book, you know, because it's outside of the box. It's not the normal bull crap that we keep feeding to each other. You know what I mean? It's us, you know, looking at a solution for us to do this thing on our own, man. So let me say just a couple of things because I don't want to. I respect Nkechi. I really have a tremendous amount of respect for Nkechi. I've never had I've always admired her, you know, and so I've been close. I've always stayed close to her work and what she has done in the city, you know, and I'm glad she has her own thing too. Very happy that she has her own thing, man. But I want to say this because, you know, we were a volunteer organization for 6 or 7 years, and, you know, we just fight. That's what we do. The National Reentry Network, we're about fighting. We ain't going for nothing. We're not interested in those incremental steps and all that. No, because we need relief, and we need relief right now. Not tomorrow, not in 30 years. No, we need relief right now. And he talked about, I heard him say something about similar to reparations or the investment. I forgot exactly what he was saying, but I know what he meant. You know, and we need to invest in returning citizens, especially in DC, because they're in all these other jurisdictions, and when they come back, they don't even feel welcome. You're talking about a job. So we got 3 programs that we was damn near forced to do, you know, a service delivery. Because I didn't want to do a service delivery. I just wanted to be a volunteer organization, you know. But we got to help our people. If you come to my doorstep, and I mean, what I look like referring you, and I got a pocket full of money, and I'm going to refer you to, or I have a place where you can sleep, or I can go get you some clothes, or I can feed you. I don't have time to be referring you to anyone. I can take care of that myself. So we did get involved in the service delivery, and we have 3 service delivery programs at the National Reentry Network for Returning Citizens. One is peer-to-peer, because I believe that you can't help us without us. So we have a peer-to-peer, and I believe that a successful reentrant like myself, who's been home 30 years, and I have a proven track record, you can do all the investigation you want. That's what you're going to find out about Courtney Stewart. You're going to find out I have a clean track record, and so I can lead another individual. And so we have that program. Then we have a restorative justice model. because I believe that we have to heal and we have to get that support system around us that can help us. And within that model, we have people committing to that support. Whatever the support is, it doesn't matter. We get people within that circle to commit to that support until that need is met. And then we have a Ready for Work model that we just launched a couple of months ago. And because I believe that, I heard you say accountability, we have to hold employers accountable. I mean, like, they have to be accountable to us. I don't need to go to an employment service. No, I can go straight to the employer themselves and find out what is the barrier, what is the problem, why you're not hiring us, right? And so we have a Ready for Work program. We had 15 individuals in our last class, our first class, and we got 8 of them jobs. We'll put that in your little notebook. We got 8 returning citizens out of 15 jobs, and we get ready to start another cohort in, I think, a week or so, or 2 weeks, I forget. But thank you for your time.
Thank you. We're going to pass it on to Gordon. Let's give it up for Courtney Stewart. Gordon Jackson.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. My name is Gordon Jackson, the Vice President of Community Affairs for Core DC. I'm honored to be on this stage with such giants, and again, we appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'll talk a little about Core DC, kind of where we're at, how we arrived to DC. I'm humbled to work under the direction and leadership of Mr. Holder, who's our President of Core DC, and Mr. Jack Brown, who's our President of Core New York. To kind of speed things up, we were awarded the halfway house contract in DC. We've been involved in a contentious exchange, for a better lack of words, since November. We remain diligent in the process, and we're continuing to strive further to make sure that we can open. A little bit about Core DC. We're not new to reentry. We've been fortunate to operate federal reentry centers in New York City for the past 20 years. We come with a tremendous amount of experience. We operate evidence-based programs, obviously. In New York City, we employ just under 1,000 folks. We recently made a footprint here in DC. We've been awarded a DHS contract here in DC, so we will be operating in DC. We're in DC. We'll continue to be here, and we're humbled to be here. So I'm always kind of short, but I think that's it.
All right, let's give it up for Gordon Jackson. And now Reverend Raylan Handler, take it away.
Thank you again for just putting this event together. Thank you, Nkechi, and Justice Roundtable. It's just good to be here, to be talking about issues like this out loud, because we don't have enough dialogue going on around issues of reentry and criminal justice reform in our community, just in specialized circles of those taking place. So I'm really pleased to be here and pleased to be engaged in this discussion. As I was thinking about some stories, because we all think about our own histories. And in my own history, when I was born, my father was serving times in Jessup's Maryland House of Correction. And it was at a young age that I was not fully cognizant of that. And I had gone out before they had closed the old prison down and was speaking to some of the inmates there. And so I was driving home, and I promised my mother and father that I was going to come over because they were still in Baltimore. But I was too tired, I was heading back to DC. So I called them and apologized. And I said, I'm leaving Maryland Jessup's. And my mother said, did anything look familiar to you? And I go, what do you mean? She said, did anything feel familiar to you? I said, well, I don't know what you're getting at. She said, well, that's where your father was when you came into this world. And so when you begin to think about the numbers of families that have had somebody or have somebody right now that's been incarcerated, it is very personal. My cousins, both of them died in prison as young men in Baltimore. Right, so when you begin to think about sort of families and what happens to end up there, it is very often just purely accidental sometimes and coincidental. I was in Massachusetts before I came to DC, and I was pastoring in Roxbury, Massachusetts, and I went out to Walpole Prison. And the only way they would let somebody in the Walpole prison was that you had to agree to do Bible study. That's not why I was there. I was there to keep a connection with all of those brothers that had come out of Roxbury and Dorchester and Mattapan. Many of them I knew their families, and I had known a lot of those young men. But I applied to do the Bible study because that was the only way I could get in there. So, first of all, they tried to discourage me by letting me into the chapel and then locking the chapel door behind me, and I would have to sit there for 3 hours until a shift changed when they let me out of the chapel, right? That was their way of saying, we really don't want you here. And then finally, when I confronted them about it and finally made them keep the chapel door open, and the men showed up, we began to do Bible study, because that's what I was there for. And I realized that 2 of the men in the group had their Bibles upside down. And they were looking to see when other people turned the page. So they couldn't recognize whether the lettering was either right side up or upside down. And at that point I said, well, we need to do literacy up in here. So I went to the prison authorities and said, look, I'm a volunteer, so I'm not costing you anything. My church will buy all the literacy material, and we need to do literacy up in here. And they said to me, you know what they said to me? Absolutely not. Right? They said, absolutely not. If you bring anything up in here, we'll consider it contraband. And that's what they did. So for the next 2 years, I Xeroxed pages and put them into a new box of Bibles I bought. And they'd search me, but they didn't search the Bibles. Right? And so for every week I went in there with that material. And every week I had to say to the guys, give it back, because if they find it up in here, they're going to know where it's coming from. And what did we read? We read basically page by page Martin Luther King's Why We Can't Wait. Right? And basically in that, an organizing fervor began to get created, a very respectful organizing fervor. So when they discovered that I was smuggling it in, I got barred out of the prison, of course. It was a week later at the church, I get a call from the warden. Warden asking me to come back out. And I'm going, why? I've been barred out of the prison. And he says, well, those men that was in your Bible study, they've organized a general strike here at the prison. And can you come and talk to them? So we went out to talk to them. And their demand was they wanted to do not a service around King, but to talk about the philosophy of King, which they had read now. Right? And that was the offense. That was the offense, that they were teaching organizing up in the prison. And I'm saying that because one of the things that we really understand is that people get in those types of environments. Those environments are punitive, and those environments, there's nothing that's restorative about it or rehabilitative about it. You know, the fact is that people are already down, and then they're pushed down even further, and they're destroyed psychologically, emotionally, and very often spiritually. And that's what goes on. And so when we begin to talk about reentry services, we got to talk about all of this wraparound services that are required, that are necessary, psychologically, emotionally, economically, physically. We got to talk about where people live and what kind of conditions they come to live in. And the fact is, one of the things that I've been engaged in as a pastor has been holding D.C. accountable. Because D.C. politicians, they always like to do the jive step. Y'all know what I'm talking about? That is, they like to pass things that look good, but then when you look at it, it really got all the loopholes under the sun, so that everybody can get around in terms of enforcing anything. And right now on this situation, I jumped in with Core DC simply because as I talked to the returning community said to me that this is our opportunity to get things right, to start all over again, to get it right. And basically I said, well, I don't know if I'm going to get involved. I'm going to call around. I'm going to talk to everybody I can talk to. And unfortunately, I didn't get anything positive back about the incumbent. And I'm sitting there going, how can you be in a town for over 40 years and nobody I can find has 44, see what I'm talking about, has anything good to say about you? And so obviously at this point, what we need to have is something in place that's going to serve our community and serve our returning citizens and basically build up and restore and connect people back to their families and to their communities and give people an opportunity and a chance to start their life all over again. That's what we're about. And so one of the things I'm standing up and saying to all of us is that we got to now take this up to, I think, a high level. Because when you talk about the mayor, you talk about the city council, All they seem to be concerned about is the next condominium that's going up. The only thing they seem to be concerned about is the next chain like Walmart that they can bring in or something like that. Where have they made a real investment in the restorative services that are needed in this community? And so therefore, one of the things that I'm going to continue to do is to advocate around doing the right thing. You can't talk one thing and do something else, because then if that's the case, you're nothing but a hypocrite and a liar.
So with that, this is how we're going to give our panel a big hand. We're not finished. What I want to do is, if you have a question or a comment, I want you to come here, and I want to get all of the questions and comments, and then I'm going to have you all make your concluding remarks. You don't have anything to jot down, so I'll jot down what questions are. If you want to respond, or if you want to respond to anything that any of the panelists have said or anything like that, you'll do that as part of your concluding. Do we have any questions? If we have any questions or comments, and if I could get an assistant or somebody up here to hold this microphone, and we'll have the people who have something to say come here. And why don't you hold the microphone for the people, because these are not long speeches.
Good evening. My name is Sidney Davis, and I'm a returning citizen. And I spent 21 years in Norton doing most progressive things that would impact the lives of men and their families. I am here to support the discussion around a newness, a freshness. Not to even think that way, continuously to advocate a disadvantage. Our disadvantage is lodged in the fact that the community is unaware that there are taxpayers that can demand a difference. I want to talk about a new freshness because I work now for Calvin Hawkins, who is a Prince George County at-large council member. I've been talking to Ms. Thompson, I've been talking to Al-Malik Farrakhan, Courtney, for many years. And I think Prince George County needs to have some of that freshness. For example, the Chamber of Commerce on this side, with Vincent Owens being the president, and the Chamber of Commerce on that side, which is David Arrington. We need to have a discussion because that's where a lot of resources in terms of jobs are connected. So when we can't have the connection in terms of a discussion to improve, then we keep the situation in the same place. We cannot afford to let it stay in the same place. But I'm here to do what is necessary to be done with the body, with the energy and information that we must have to make the necessary change. It is an impossibility to change if we don't have discussion. So, question to you, sister. I want you to research how Lawton was moved. Lawton was moved with some of our people who were representatives. And when you throw a rock and hide your hand, you don't know. So you step into it. So you got to question those who are in these rooms having these discussions. Eleanor Holmes Norton was a primary instrument in removing Norton. That's right. And why was she a primary instrument? Because they wanted, economically, they wanted that land, 37,000 acres of land. You go look at it now, they got a Norton Museum that they put in there. And depending upon the men who did the time, they won't pay them for their stories. They just want the information. So you gotta ask her the question. How did Norton get moved? Who was involved with that? And what was that discussion around? Because you virtually destroyed 7,000 families, men and women sent to other states to make jobs for those states. But now when having to come back here, there's nothing. And so if you don't ask the questions, forensic questions, deep to the core of what stopped the annihilation of families in this society.
So I really appreciate your comments, and thank you very much for sharing. Do we have any other questions or comments? We're going to hear at the mall, and then we're going to do a global, yeah.
Good evening. My name is Jed Black, and my question is to Mrs. Stewart and a few of the other great people that's up on this panel. Being from the Washington, D.C. area and having friends that's been incarcerated for 15, 20 years plus coming home on an everyday basis of just seeing these individuals in conversation, some of them ask or they explain how hard it is for them to get jobs. Just today I had a good close friend of mine that just came home from 12 years of being incarcerated, the same exactly what each and every one of you are saying, how it's hard for him to get a job, how there's no program for the ex-offenders like it used to be. I also represent Ceasefire Don't Smoke the Brothers, where we sat, where we only had 34 people. Ceasefire Don't Smoke the Brothers and Sisters, where we only had 34 attendees to go and fight years ago before Marion Browser became mayor. When Marion Barry, the great Marion Barry, was still living, had this initiative for the ex-offenders, and then Menendez and them took out this initiative. We were fighting for this actual thing 7 years ago, which you all are still fighting for now. So my question to you, Mrs. Stewart, is what information, email, or number, because just like you said, my buddy is having a hard time with the email because when he's putting in these applications, he can't physically see the person that he wants to go get this job and let him know that he has changed. He just had an altercation with his son because his son is out here in the street being hard-headed and reminding him of what he came from. So we need some type of, not just allocation, we need some type of numbers where people like myself that are community leaders that are not afraid to go in the streets hand in hand with these numbers to these same ex-offenders. Because a lot of it, what I haven't heard anybody say is the fear. People fear the word ex-offender. They fear crime. They fear that somebody's going to rape them, beat them, or do stuff like that. I haven't been incarcerated, but all my friends and peers are either dead or gone. And I moved on to another level, but it's not about me. All I want to do is help. So for me, I don't need a lot of literature. I just need the number they can call, and that person is going to help them respond. So
Thank you very much. Let's keep it rolling. Introduce yourself. No, we're going to get to it. I got it there.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much to the panelists who spoke. My name is Taylor Ware. I am a native Prince George's Countyan. I work in D.C., working on education policy. And my question is kind of, how are we incorporating education into our restorative justice policies? That being early elementary education and then working with opportunity youth. So youth between 16 and 24 who are looking for opportunities for job employment and apprenticeship. And if those opportunities don't exist, how can I, as a policy maker in the making, how can I develop those policies?
Great. Last question or comment.
Hi, this is Hannah with Students for Sensible Drug Policy. I just wanted to ask if you could expand a little bit more about the situation with the DC budget around funding for reentry services and how the regular citizen could get involved with their council members and talking to the mayor about making sure that that's corrected in the next budget.
Okay, great. Thank you so very much. So let me just try to,
I can help you out, Mama and Kichi. I can help you out. So,
okay, help me out.
For everybody that just spoke, I think something just asked the question. This is a long-term fight to make some of these things happen, but to be as specific as I possibly can, right now is budget season in Washington, D.C. So one tactic out of many that we can use is when the mayor's office on returning citizens has its oversight hearing on this performance, we can go down to city council and say, hey, these are some of the changes we want to see made in the office on returning citizens, right? And then when they have the budget hearing for public safety, we can go down there and say, we want to see this budget item increased and we want to see these services given to this particular agency. So that's one way to do it through the legislative process. And then the other way is to follow in the strategic and creative manners that we've seen the Don't Mute DC campaign happen. We're not just going to be able to legislate and be able to press conference our way into seeing change. We got to tap into organizers on the ground like Brother Kimon. We got to get out there. Let's bring a go-go band down to City Hall and tell them, don't mute returning citizens. Right? We got to be creative in our methods of trying to see change. And so then that way we're working inside of the system through the legislative process, and we're also working outside of the system as well. And then when some of these developers come to the city and they want to develop, we need to make sure that they put into their community benefits agreements plans for returning citizens. I've not yet seen one workforce development program hire somebody. I see all of these programs, but I don't see them working in the manner in which they should. So then it's up to us to challenge them to hire returning citizens.
It's not even in the interest. Oh, I'm sorry. No, I got managed. It's not in the interest of this city to invest in returning citizens. So let's be clear about that. The city has a monopoly, and that monopoly is, they want the tall skyscrapers, which they can't build in DC, so they build the short scrapers. So let's be clear and real and understanding, right? Core DC, I went to New York. A few of us went up to New York and we visited Core DC because we wanted to find out who they were, what they were about. And man, they had the cleanest facility I ever seen, okay? It was well lit, you could see everything. Every single person, every single individual greeted us with a smile, a handshake, or a hug, okay? They fed us, they ate good food, good conversation. The quarters where the residents lived were immaculate, okay? And then we talked to the residents, okay? We had an open discussion with, I think it was 5 residents. And they had nothing but good things to say about Core DC. And I'm talking about real examples of real life situations where, I'll give you one example where the person was with their mother, I believe was in the hospital, and she was having surgery, and he would have been staying over the time allotted for his pass. And so he called back to Core DC and let them know the situation, and Core DC told him to take all the time he needed. Okay? You're not going to get that from no Hope Village, talking about something, take all the time you needed. No, you need to get back here at the time you're supposed to be here under any and all circumstances, right? And then you got to look at the fact that Hope Village has been here for 44 years, right? It's time for change. You know, we trying to bring something new, something different. We don't want to keep repeating the same old stuff. And so when you got this monopoly and this stronghold on a government, you've been here 44 years, so you've been able to strangle everybody. You done suck blood out of the community. You got a little stranglehold on the government. You understand? You're getting millions and millions of dollars. It's just time for change. We have an organization that is willing to work with community-based organizations, where it all starts and ends at. It starts with us and it ends with us because we are in proximity of our returning citizens. We drop them off at their house. I got 3 of them in here tonight that's waiting on me to take them where they need to go when we leave here this evening. So that's what Core DC, they are willing to partner with us. Me and Paula, I'm a co-chair of RAND. RAND has 23 returning citizen organizations, and all of us went to Core DC, and they are willing to work with us and give us a space within a space, give us access to our residents, and so forth and so on. We wasn't getting that with Hope Village, okay? So it's like the difference is night and day. So I wanted to make sure that
Give that phone number, someone wanted the number, phone number.
The number for the job, okay, so our number is 202-584-1000. Real easy, 202-584-1000.
We're giving everybody their closing remarks and answering questions and, well, yeah, it's all good.
Catch me in the hallway.
Who's next? Paula Thompson.
Yeah, just really quickly to answer the question about the budget, is that the ask from Rand was $1 million for this year. Unfortunately, what's been proposed is $200,000. And what you can do to help is to contact all of your council members and to demand that they close that gap. We're asking for an additional $800,000, which is really a drop in the bucket compared to victim services, who is being allocated $13 million. So it is totally unacceptable that there is not an investment in returning citizens in DC. So I would definitely implore everyone to contact their council members, but also the mayor's office, and to demand that she looks at the population, that everyone in the city is a part of DC and should be served, and not just certain wards. I would also say that it's a joint effort, so it doesn't matter if you live in Wards 7 and 8 or Wards 1 through 6. And we know that oftentimes, and to your point about sort of the mobilization process, that's very true, that you need to show up at the hearings and you should testify. And we did all of that this year, and we still came out with $200,000, so that's not working. So what needs to happen is that we know that in Ward 7 and 8 is that is a population of people who do not vote. And therefore, because they are voiceless and they don't vote, nor do they have property taxes because they don't own the property, that they're dismissed. And so we need the entire city to understand that this is a problem that impacts us all. And so people they're concerned about public safety. Well, public safety impacts all of us. And if we're not all involved, and if we don't consider the fact that everyone, all returning citizens, and those just as involved citizens who are here, who are working, who are striving, that they deserve the same opportunities. And so there has to be a demand, not a request, of the mayor, of the council, that they make a real, true, and respectable investment in reentry services across this city.
And actually, I think that we have to follow up on that point.
And let me say something precisely to that point. I was wondering, because the issue is we really have not had such a broad discussion or pressure on these politicians, and so these politicians get running high. If you were to call, if you were to call a mass gathering at the Wilson Building, I promise you I'd be there. How many of y'all would be there? How many of y'all would be there? To press on this budgetary issue, because one of the things that they do, they always run and hide, and that they go and they take us, understand how the process, they take us through the motion of the hearing, but they've already decided, even while we are testifying, what the answer is. And so therefore they come out at the other end with their answer. And the fact is they're always going to get away with that unless we put some real kind of public pressure upon them and say, these are our demands, this is what we need for you to start down the road of proper services to the returning community and what reentry services begin to look like. I think it's time for us to do this. I think it's time for us to step into the street and go into the street. You see all the hands went up?
Yeah, I saw that.
I'm behind you. I'm with you. Not behind. I'm alongside you. All right. So just do it. Let's do it. Amen.
Amen. Amelie.
I'm sitting here with something, with a newsletter. In March 7th, 1997, we took over the control board. We took over city council. We took backyard and put them up on the steps of city council. And these were the demands, what we were bucking on. Budget cuts that adversely affect the lives of the city youth, cuts to the anti-violence program, the random shutdown of go-go, massive cut to jobs in the summer youth program, increased police brutality against black and Latinos. Hold on. Of Latinos, elimination of the parole. What we're writing for today. This is over 20-something years ago. So we ain't talking this, we doing it. And guess what? A lot of the organizations wouldn't roll with us. They said we was too radical. They wouldn't touch us with a 10-foot pole. But we was out there rumbling, still rumbling. So I'm glad to see them hands go up. And I want to say something else. That brother Sidney Davis back there, Roach Brown, Hanif, Watkins, where else, Sidney? Where was 6 of us that made this thing about ex-prisoners grow in this town. When wasn't nobody out there pushing this, we were out there pushing this. There wasn't no mocha. There wasn't none of that. We went into the mayor's office. I don't care if it was Anthony Williams, whoever was in it, mayor. We got it in it, we took it to mayor about close to law. Right? I'm saying, come on, man. You know, I didn't get a chance to say this. The Honorable Master Elijah Muhammad taught us to do for self and kind. That's what Cease-Fire was based on. We wasn't looking for no job. We was creating jobs. We had the largest black water business in the city, but we sold it to anybody that wanted it. We paid our men $15 and $20 an hour. It just came out of prison. And guess what? We never asked government for a dime. 1 penny. I'm not telling y'all not to ask, but yet they gave us over $2 million. They came to us behind the fact of the work we demonstrated and been doing in this city. We had the largest peace squad. We went after the police, so they took my building from me. For 10 years, we got a community center. That's ours. Took it from us. Man, we ain't begging. And we can't beg. We got to stand up and fight like hell. We got to take back what's ours. So, you know, I'm too radical. Y'all got to excuse me.
No, it's all good.
But that's how we got here. All right? That's how we got here. Thank you.
Well, if you don't mind, I want to just give Paula the last word. She's going to say something about parole, and I think this is part of this as well. And I'm just saying we're going to have a phenomenal performance and a very brief performance in a moment. So, oh, and I just want to say one other thing. I know that there's some more questions out there, but everybody in this audience is an expert here. I see organizations, people, and all like that. We'll have networking as we're finishing up the food and cleaning up and book signing. So those who didn't get a chance to raise the question, we all gonna be here and with you. Okay. So
thank you, Nikichi. And just really quickly, this is an interesting time right now in the district with criminal justice, and I think that we have to seize this opportunity while we have it. And tomorrow evening there is a speak out about the DC Parole Commission. It is going to end, it ends in November of this year. And I think this is another time where we don't ask, but we demand that DC Parole returns under the jurisdiction, so that, you know, there have been draconian sentences and against our residents, and so I think that we have to demand that we change it and it comes back under home rule. So I want to encourage everyone, there's information in the back. There is the speak out tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. at First Rock Baptist Church, and I really would really love to see everyone there and their voices being heard. Thank you.
Absolutely. And also tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock, Crossroad, Roach Brown, WPFW, the focus is going to be on parole and leading up to that forum as well. Let's give our panelists a big hand. Emily Farmer, Jordan Jackson, Salima Gabo, Courtney Stewart, Paula Thompson, Reverend Jalen, Handler. Thank you very much for coming out. We want to go about to bring up our star performer here, Lamont Carey, and then we're going to do some more networking and see any other questions people have. So I want to just come on and bring up Lamont's motto is basically keep your hustle, but change your what? Product. Keep your hustle, but change your product. That's what he's all about, because he still got his hustle. Oh, but he got a brand new product. Yes, indeed. And he's just making waves, not just here in D.C., but all over the country and all over the world. So I'm just, you know, someone in prison told him he was a good storyteller. So, you know, he changed his product. And he started doing that and became an entrepreneur. And I'm just gonna bring him up. Let's give him a big hand. Let him know. Yeah. You can see him on billboards all over the city. Take it back.
And the Justice Roundtable for allowing me to take the stage. But before I begin this performance, I want to say, I know Hope Village has been a soul in many ways. It has contributed greatly to the recidivism rate. And I just hope that when this new halfway house come onto the scene, that they recognize there's 5 individuals in here. If you put them together, they have been incarcerated 100 years in this room. And these individuals have been home 10 plus years. And so I think what we should be looking at is how do we replicate those individuals. And if to them it's just not about having a job. To them it's about determination of being on the outside of this fence as it is for me. Every day that I wake up and I'm not behind a wall, that I'm not behind a fence, this is success for me. So what I will hope when this new halfway house really come into existence, that if something goes on inside of that halfway house, that doesn't mean that if I don't have nothing to do with it, there's no reason that I shouldn't be able to leave the halfway house to go to my job. And that's what's currently happening under Hope Village. If something goes wrong in that institution, then I can't get out and go to work. And if they find something that's illegal inside of that room, I'm in jeopardy of being sent over to the jail, being sent back into the institution if I don't tell on the individual who that belongs to. Why should I be held responsible for something in my room that I had nothing to do with? So I'm hoping that this new institution that comes into play think about that, right? Because that's our biggest problem. One of our biggest problems with Hope Village is that they don't allow individuals to go out to work, that they hold them accountable for stuff that other people did. And if I'm asking the city and the rest of the country not to hold me accountable, then I'm also asking this halfway house not to hold me accountable to other people's action. Because when I can't go to work because of something that somebody else did in the halfway house, how many times do you think my job is going to allow that to happen before they let me go? Right? So that caused the halfway house being a contributor of people losing their jobs, people being sent back where they got to see the parole board, and so that has to change. And one of the other things that I've learned from going inside of institutions is that the closer that an individual gets to release, the more skeptical sometimes they get about their plans. And so this halfway house, if they the first line of defense of us coming out of prison and transitioning and implementing our plans, then how do they help us begin to initiate our new life, right? So we hear job training, we're going to help find jobs. I can name 20 organizations in DC that's doing that. So how are they going to work with these organizations that's already in existence, that's helping get a job? Because what we know is finding a job ain't easy for none of the organizations that's doing it. And not only that, not just taking advice from returning citizens on what needs to be done in order to make the halfway house or re-entry successful, but give us access to some of the funding. Right? These individuals are replications of what we want to see when individuals get released from prison, but we are not always at the table. And so we have to demand not only be at the table and use our voice, but also have access to the money to fund these programs, because who knows better than us what it takes, right? When you still getting in the shower, when you come home with your shower shoes on or your boxers on, or you got all your stuff stored by the side of your bed because that's how you've been living for the last 5 years. Who can talk about that? How many of us that's never been to prison can really tap into somebody that has been to prison and really identify what they have been through? But there are a minimum of 5 people in this room together that did 100 years. So those are some of the experts that have to be at the table, not just ciphering information off of them, but give them access to the funding as well. We good? Yeah. So, and quick, my name is Lamont Curry. I went to prison at 16, started writing books in prison. And now I have two companies, Le Curry Enterprise, where I do a lot of production kind of stuff and consulting and contact visits, which is my nonprofit. And we're more of a mobile organization. We go around where people call on us. So like on 2 times next month, I'll be in Florida. I've been in Ghana doing work on reentry and stuff like that. So, and I brought some of my books. I got some fiction books, I got some poetry, I got some business, and I got a book called Dead Before 18, Saving Our Boys from the Street. It's actually a guide for young men and women to recognize some of the challenges or the barriers that they're gonna face that can put them in prison. Everything from how you know you're being recruited to be a drug dealer, right? To no means no, right? Or how to deal with your anger. So now I'm gonna shut up and do a poem. That's cool? See, when I walked out that gate, I looked straight, leaving prison behind me, leaving the streets behind me. But my mother always told me that my past would always find me. See, I've been looking for a job for almost a year and ain't nobody hiring. So I'm glad that they done banned the box, but it's that empty block on my resume that seems to be whispering. Come on, man. He done been to the penitentiary. And they told me to forget my past and change people, places, and things if I really wanted to change. But now I'm in this new job interview, not knowing what to say or what to do, so I say what I've been taught. I'm a hard worker. I'm a fast learner. And I'm dependable. And she leaned over and said, sir, what you talking about? That ain't what we looking for. We're looking for somebody with expertise in sales. So I smiled on the outside because in the inside I'm yelling, that's the reason that I went to jail. So once I was able to tell her what I knew about sales, without actually saying what I knew about sales, I got the job. See, they say when things go wrong, we revert back to what we know. But there's some skills from our criminal past that are indeed transferable. So they say when things go wrong, we revert back to what we know. But there's some skills from our criminal past that are indeed transferable. Like when it's hard to find a job, maybe teaching entrepreneurship would do the trick. See, I had a business in my past, it's just my products and my services, they weren't legit. But once I made that switch, the products that was legit, like publishing my own books and producing my own scripts, then I was able to implement services like working with returning citizens and kids who are at risk. See, I've been in those shoes and I know what they stand to lose if they don't completely understand what's at hand. And I ain't saying that this is the master plan, but if we work hand in hand, we can reduce the amount of incarceration. Because see, they say when things go wrong, we revert back to what we know. But there's some skills from our criminal past that are indeed transferable. Like from the 1st through the 15th, I learned supply and demand. And I also learned branding and profitability analysis. And I ain't saying all of this to boast and brag. I'm just saying maybe there's some skill sets that you and I didn't recognize that we had that increase the opportunities that exist. Because see, now I'm running around the world speaking about a past that I was told that I should forget. Because see, they say when things go wrong, we revert back to what we know. But there's some skills from our criminal past that are indeed transferable. See, they say when things go wrong, we revert back to what we know. But the reason I'm successful today, ladies and gentlemen, is because I had skills that was transferable. So I changed my products, one of my products, right? Keep your hustle, but change your product. And so that's one of the skills, because most of the individuals that go to in prison, they trying to make money, right? And there is no crime really that I can look at that I can't find a skill set that can be an asset to a company. And we have to change the thinking of the individuals who's coming home from prison, seeing themselves as a liability and seeing themselves as an asset, like many of the men and women in this room who have become an asset not only to their family, to themselves, but to the community as a whole. So I'm going to do one more piece for y'all and I'm going to get out y'all way. We cool?
Yeah.
His finger traces the glass like it's the outline of my face, where my skin is supposed to be. See, he's not used to touching me, and he's telling himself that he's a big boy to me in his mind. And he told himself not to cry when he leaves. So he pours his tears in the streets, in the school, and at home, trying to disperse his confusion and frustration on why daddy ain't home. The white man did it. Mandatory minimum prison sentences did it. The prison system did it. Daddy did it, because I told him that I did. And he's 16 years old now, and he's still wondering why daddy ain't here, and he hasn't hugged me since he was 3. And even though in prison I got me a GED, a college degree, and helping other inmates from going crazy, but when is my debt paid? They said that I had to change, and I did. Now I'm just witnessing the heartbreak of my kid. And then the door opened, and it was hard for me to focus. My son standing there with his arms wide open for me as he stepped into our cell. 70% of kids with incarcerated parents end up in jail. 70% of kids with incarcerated parents end up in jail. And there are 2.1 million people in prison. And we wondering why they still building them. They building them for our children. They building them for our children. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.